Zenthka looked at the orders on his datapad and felt his stomach twist. He had been a military observer for the Valorian Defense Council for 12 years. He had watched battles between dozens of different species, but this was his first time being assigned to watch humans fight. The transport ship shook as it came out of hyperspace. Through the window, Zenthka could see the human ship waiting for him. The UES Defiance was bigger than he expected. It looked rough and heavy, like someone had built it with spare parts and hope. Most alien ships had smooth lines and elegant curves. This human ship looked like a floating brick with weapons stuck all over it. The docking process was loud and clumsy. Valorian ships connected with barely a whisper. The human ship grabbed his transport with metal clamps that made grinding noises. When the airlock opened, Zenthka stepped into chaos. Human crew members were running everywhere. They were shouting at each other across the corridor. Someone was playing music from a small device. Two humans were arguing about something called football while they worked on a control panel. The whole place smelled like coffee and machine oil. A tall human with short brown hair walked up to him. The human wore a blue uniform with silver bars on his shoulders. "You must be our Valorian observer," the human said. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. Welcome aboard the Defiance." Zenthka tried to give a proper military salute. Captain Morrison just stuck out his hand. After a moment of confusion, Zenthka shook it. The human's grip was firm and warm. "Let me show you around," Morrison said. "Fair warning, though, we do things a bit different than most species." That was an understatement. As they walked through the ship, Zenthka noticed that human military organization was nothing like what he had studied. Crew members called their captain by his first name. Officers were eating lunch with enlisted personnel. Someone had painted cartoon characters on the wall of the weapons bay. They stopped at the bridge. A woman with red hair tied back in a ponytail was bent over a tactical display. She was wearing the same blue uniform as the captain, but with different bars on her shoulders. "Lisa, come meet our observer," Morrison called out. The woman looked up and smiled. "You're the Valorian who's going to write a report about how we fight?" she asked. "Hope you're ready for some excitement." "This is Lisa Kane, my tactical officer," Morrison explained. "She's the one who figures out how to blow things up." Kane laughed. "I prefer to think of it as aggressive problem-solving." Zenthka made notes on his datapad. Human officers seemed to joke about violence. This was concerning. Most civilized species treated warfare with proper seriousness. Next, they went to the Marine barracks. A stocky man with a thick neck was shouting at a group of younger humans. They were doing some kind of physical exercise that involved lifting heavy weights and running in place. "Steve Brooks, Marine commander," Morrison said. "Steve trains our ground fighters." Brooks walked over and nodded at Zenthka. "So you're here to see how humans fight?" he asked. "Good. Maybe you can explain to your people why they should be glad we're on the same side." The Marines behind Brooks were covered in sweat. Some had scars on their arms and faces. They looked at Zenthka with curious eyes. One of them, a young woman with short blonde hair, waved at him. "That's Amy Foster," Brooks said, "one of my best squad leaders. Amy, show our guest how humans say hello." Amy Foster grinned and flexed her arm muscles. The other Marines laughed. Zenthka was not sure what this meant, but he made more notes. In the medical bay, they met Dr. Alex Turner. He was a thin man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He was treating a crew member who had burned his hand on some equipment. "Dr. Turner keeps us all in one piece," Morrison said. "I try," Turner replied, "though these people make it challenging. Just yesterday, someone tried to fix a plasma conduit with a hammer. It worked, didn't it?" the injured crew member said. Turner shook his head but smiled. Human engineering at its finest. As they continued the tour, Zenthka noticed more strange things about human behavior. They seemed to have no respect for proper chain of command. Officers and enlisted personnel talked to each other like friends. The ship was full of personal items and decorations. Someone had hung photographs of their family next to weapon controls. In the mess hall, dozens of humans were eating and talking loudly. They were telling stories and laughing. Some were playing card games. It looked more like a social gathering than a military meal. "We've been together for 8 months now," Morrison explained as they sat down with food trays. "Most of these people have never fought in a real war before. Earth's been pretty peaceful for the last 50 years. Zenthka was shocked. "These are untested troops?" "Well, we've done training exercises and some pirate hunting," Kane said. "But yeah, most of us haven't seen serious combat." This explained a lot. The lack of discipline, the casual behavior, the emotional responses. These humans were amateurs playing at being soldiers. How many battles have you personally fought in, Captain Morrison? Zenthka asked. Morrison thought for a moment. 2, maybe 3 real ones. Depends on how you count pirate raids. Zenthka felt sorry for these humans. They seemed nice enough, but they were about to face the Kethvar Empire. The Kethvar were professional warriors who had conquered a dozen star systems. These friendly, disorganized humans would be slaughtered. That evening, Zenthka was given a small cabin near the bridge. As he tried to sleep, he could hear humans talking and laughing in the corridors. Someone was playing a guitar. Others were having a loud conversation about something called baseball. He made his first report to the Valorian Defense Council. The humans were brave but inexperienced. They had good technology but poor discipline. They cared too much about individual relationships and not enough about military efficiency. They would probably fight hard, but they would lose. Zenthka had no idea how wrong he was. In 3 days, they would encounter a Kethvar patrol fleet. That was when he would begin to understand what human warfare really looked like, and it would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. The alarm woke Zenthka from a deep sleep. Red lights flashed in his cabin while a loud siren wailed through the ship. He grabbed his datapad and ran toward the bridge. The corridors were full of running humans, but there was no panic. They moved with purpose, checking equipment and calling out status reports. The jokes and laughter from the previous days were gone. Something had changed in the humans' behavior. On the bridge, Captain Morrison stood behind the main display screen. His relaxed manner was completely different now. His voice was calm and steady as he gave orders. Lisa, what do we have? He asked. 3 Kethvar ships, Kane replied from her tactical station. Medium cruisers, probably a patrol group. They're trying to scan us. Steve, get your Marines ready, Morrison said into his communication device. We might need boarding teams. Zenthka found a corner where he could observe without getting in the way. The bridge crew worked with smooth efficiency. The casual friendliness was still there, but underneath it was something harder and more focused. They're powering up weapons, Kane reported. No attempt at communication. Typical Kethvar, Morrison said. Show them we're not an easy target. Charge all weapons, but don't fire first. The ship vibrated as the weapon systems came online. Through the main screen, Zenthka could see the enemy ships approaching. They were sleek and predatory, designed for war. Next to them, the human ship still looked like flying junk. Captain, they're firing, Kane announced. Energy beams struck the Defiance's shields. The ship shook but held together. Morrison's expression didn't change. Return fire, he said quietly. Take out their engines if you can. The human ship's weapons fired back. The shots were precise and controlled. One Kethvar ship lost power and began drifting. The other 2 scattered and regrouped. Zenthka was impressed. The humans were fighting better than he expected. But then something went wrong. Captain, the voice came from the communications station. Danny Price's shuttle got caught in the crossfire. His Marines are trapped on the damaged Kethvar ship. Morrison's jaw tightened. How many? 6 Marines, including Price, the communications officer replied. The shuttle's destroyed. They're stuck over there with limited air supply. Kane looked up from her station. Sir, we should focus on the 2 active enemy ships. Those Marines are probably dead already. Zenthka nodded to himself. This was standard military thinking. You couldn't risk an entire ship to save a few trapped soldiers. It was sad but logical, but Morrison's response surprised him. Like hell we're leaving them, the captain said. Amy, I need a rescue team ready in 5 minutes. Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice came through the communication system. Already suiting up, sir. Give me a fast ship and some volunteers. Captain, Kane said carefully, the tactical situation doesn't support a rescue mission. We're outnumbered and those Kethvar ships are moving to attack positions. Morrison looked at her with eyes that had gone very cold. Lisa, those are our people over there. We don't leave our people behind, ever. The bridge crew fell silent. Zenthka realized he was seeing something important about human nature. They valued individual lives over tactical advantage. It was admirable but militarily foolish. Amy's team is launching, someone reported. On the screen, Zenthka watched a small human ship race toward the damaged Kethvar vessel. The 2 active enemy ships moved to intercept it. Morrison ordered the Defiance to block their approach. What happened next confused Zenthka completely. The human ship began fighting with an intensity that seemed to come from nowhere. The casual, friendly crew transformed into something fierce and focused. Kane targeted the enemy ships with deadly precision. Her fingers moved across the controls like she was playing a musical instrument. Every shot hit exactly where it would do the most damage. "Amy's on the HFY ship," the communications officer reported. "She's found our people. They're alive, but Danny Price is hurt bad." Morrison's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of his command chair. "How long do they need?" 10 minutes to cut through the bulkhead and get them out. The HFY ships pressed their attack. Energy beams and missile explosions lit up the space around the Defiance. The human ship took hit after hit but kept fighting. Zenthka watched the crew work together with perfect coordination. They moved like they had been fighting together for years instead of months. Every person knew exactly what to do. But there was something else, something that made his skin crawl. They were angry, not the hot, wild anger of young warriors, but the cold, steady anger of people who had been pushed too far. When the navigation officer plotted attack courses, her face was calm but her eyes were like ice. When the weapons officer fired the guns, he did it with mechanical precision that felt more dangerous than any rage. "Amy's team is coming back," someone called out. "They've got all 6 Marines." "Good," Morrison said. "Now let's finish this." The change in the human attack pattern was immediate and terrifying. Instead of fighting defensively, the Defiance began hunting the HFY ships like a predator. Kane coordinated strikes that hit multiple targets at once. The human ship moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so big and clunky. One by one, the HFY ships lost weapons, engines, and life support. But the humans didn't just disable them. They made sure the enemy ships could never fight again. Every shot was calculated to cause maximum damage with no chance of repair. In 20 minutes, it was over. 3 HFY ships drifted powerless in space. The humans had won completely, but what disturbed Zenthka was how quickly they changed back to their normal behavior. As soon as the fighting stopped, they were joking and checking on each other again. Dr. Turner was already working on the wounded Marines. Someone made coffee for the bridge crew. "Not bad for beginners," Kane said with a smile. Morrison nodded. "Amy did good work over there." Zenthka stared at them. Minutes ago, these same people had systematically destroyed 3 warships with cold efficiency. Now they were acting like nothing had happened. He made notes on his data pad, but his hands were shaking slightly. These humans were not what he had expected. They fought differently than any species he had observed. They cared about their people with desperate intensity, but when threatened, they became something much more dangerous than simple warriors. And this was just a small patrol action. Zenthka wondered what would happen when the humans faced a real threat. He was beginning to suspect that the galaxy might not be ready for the answer to that question. 2 days after the patrol battle, everything changed. Zenthka was in the mess hall eating breakfast when the emergency alarms started screaming. This time, they didn't stop after a few minutes. Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. We have multiple hostile contacts incoming." Zenthka rushed to the bridge. The main display screen showed more red dots than he could count. The HFY had sent a real fleet this time. Dozens of ships were dropping out of hyperspace in attack formation. "Count?" Morrison asked, his voice steady but tight. 43 ships, Kane reported. "Mix of cruisers, destroyers, and at least 3 battleships. They outgun us 8-1. Zenthka felt his heart sink. The humans had fought well against 3 ships, but this was impossible. No single ship could face those odds and survive. "Sir?" the communications officer called out. "We're getting a message from the HFY fleet commander." "Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a HFY officer. The alien had dark scales and yellow eyes that glowed with malice. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Human vessel," the HFY said. "You destroyed our patrol ships. This is unacceptable. Surrender now and we will kill you quickly." Morrison stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiance. You fired on us first. We defended ourselves." The HFY officer made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species is new to war, human. Let me teach you how it really works. We know the location of your colony worlds. After we destroy your ship, we will visit them. Your people will learn what happens when they oppose the HFY Empire." The communication ended. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then Zenthka saw something that chilled him to his core. Every human on the bridge had gone very still. Their faces showed no emotion at all. Morrison looked at his crew with eyes that had turned completely cold. Kelly, he said to the navigation officer, plot a course that keeps us between them and human space. Already done, sir, Kelly Wright replied. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made Zenthka's skin crawl. Tony, I need everything the engines can give us, Morrison continued. You'll have it, Captain, Tony Miller answered from the engineering station. His fingers were already dancing across his controls. Lisa, go to Detroit Protocol. Kane looked up sharply. Sir, are you sure? Detroit Protocol is, I'm sure, Morrison said. They threatened our colonies. That changes everything. Zenthka didn't know what Detroit Protocol meant, but the way the humans said it made him afraid. The casual friendliness that had defined the crew was completely gone. In its place was something cold and systematic that felt more dangerous than any rage. Beth, send a message to Fleet Command, Morrison said to the communications officer. Tell them we've encountered a Kethvar fleet that has made direct threats against human civilian populations. Include our tactical data and current position. Message sent, sir, Beth Young replied. Also send our personal messages home. All of them. Make sure they get through. The crew worked in perfect silence. Zenthka realized that the humans were preparing to die. But they weren't acting like people facing certain death. They were acting like people with a job to do. The Kethvar fleet approached in a standard attack formation. They clearly expected the single human ship to either run or surrender. Instead, the Defiance moved to meet them head-on. Sir, Kane reported, I'm reading weaknesses in their formation. If we target the command ship's communication array first, we can disrupt their coordination. Do it, Morrison said. The battle began differently than Zenthka expected. Instead of the wild, emotional fighting he had seen before, the humans fought with mechanical precision. Every shot was calculated. Every movement had a purpose. Kane didn't just target enemy weapons or engines. She targeted specific systems that would cause maximum confusion. Communication arrays went down first, then navigation computers, then life support systems. The humans weren't just trying to win the battle. They were trying to cripple the entire fleet. Rick, take your squadron and hit their supply ships, Morrison ordered. Copy that, Rick Davis replied from his fighter, going after their logistics. Zenthka watched in horror as the human pilots began systematically destroying ships that weren't even fighting. Supply vessels, repair ships, medical transports. The humans were targeting everything that would allow the Kethvar fleet to continue operating. Captain, Kane called out, I'm detecting data transfers from several enemy ships. They're trying to download navigation data and fleet positions. Block those transfers, Morrison said immediately, and see if we can hack their systems while they're trying. Already on it, Kane replied. I'm uploading a virus that should spread through their network. Zenthka was shocked. The humans weren't just fighting this battle. They were trying to damage the entire Kethvar military structure. They were treating this single engagement as part of a larger war. The Defiance took heavy damage as enemy fire concentrated on it. But instead of slowing down, the humans seemed to fight harder. When the main weapons array was damaged, they switched to backup systems. When the shields failed, they used the ship's armor as a weapon, ramming smaller enemy vessels. Engineering to bridge. Tony Miller's voice came through the communication system. I've got an idea, but it's crazy. Tell me, Morrison said. I can overload our reactor and direct the energy pulse through the main deflector array. It won't destroy their big ships, but it'll fry every electronic system within 10,000 kilometers. Do it, Morrison ordered without hesitation. Sir, that'll probably kill us too, Miller warned. Maybe, but it'll definitely stop them from reaching human space. Zenthka watched the crew prepare for what was essentially a suicide attack, but none of them seemed afraid. They worked with calm efficiency, as if sacrificing their lives to protect their colonies was just another tactical decision. The energy pulse, when it came, lit up space like a miniature star. Most of the Kethvar fleet went dark immediately. Emergency lighting flickered on scattered ships as their crews tried to figure out what had happened. But the Defiance was still there. Damaged and barely functioning, but alive. Damage report, Morrison called out. We're in bad shape, Kane replied, but we're still here. Most of our weapons are down, but we've got enough power for life support and basic movement. What about them? 37 ships are completely disabled. The remaining 6 are trying to retreat, but their navigation systems are fried. They're basically flying blind. Morrison nodded. Hunt them down. All of them? I don't want any survivors reaching Kethvar space with reports about human capabilities. The next few hours were the most disturbing thing Zenthka had ever witnessed. The humans methodically tracked down and destroyed every remaining enemy ship. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners. When Dr. Turner detected life signs on disabled vessels, he reported their locations so the weapons teams could target them more effectively. By the end, 43 Kethvar ships had been reduced to floating debris. Not a single enemy had escaped to carry word back to their empire. As the humans began damage control and casualty reports, Zenthka finally understood what he had witnessed. These people didn't fight like soldiers or even warriors. They fought like a force of nature that had been awakened and pointed at an enemy, and they had done it all while staying completely rational and controlled. That was the most terrifying part of all. In the days following the fleet battle, Zenthka watched the humans work on their damaged ship. They moved with the same calm efficiency they had shown during combat. But something had changed in them. The casual jokes were fewer. The easy laughter was gone. They worked with a focused intensity that never seemed to stop. Captain Morrison called a meeting in the main briefing room. The senior officers gathered around a large table covered with star charts and tactical displays. Zenthka was allowed to observe from a corner chair. "Intelligence reports are coming in," Morrison began. "The Kethvar fleet we destroyed was part of a larger offensive. They're moving against human colonies on 3 fronts. Kane pointed to red marks on the star chart. These are confirmed attack sites: New Boston, Terra Verde, and Port Liberty. Early reports suggest civilian casualties." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every human face went very still. Dr. Turner, who had been gently cleaning his glasses, stopped moving completely. "How many?" Morrison asked quietly. "New Boston is gone," Kane replied. 2 million people. Terra Verde is under siege. Port Liberty is evacuating, but the Kethvar are targeting the evacuation ships." Steve Brooks slammed his fist on the table. "They're killing civilians on purpose." "Yes," Morrison said. "They are." Zenthka had studied human psychology, but he had never seen anything like what happened next. The humans didn't shout or rage. Instead, they became something else entirely. Their voices stayed calm, but their eyes turned into empty spaces that seemed to swallow light. "Navigation data from the ships we captured," Kane continued, placing data chips on the table. "Complete star charts showing Kethvar military bases, supply routes, and command centers." Morrison picked up one of the chips. "How accurate?" "Perfect. Their security was designed to stop hacking, not virus attacks. We have everything. Fleet positions, patrol schedules, even the locations of their military academies." "Good," Morrison said. The way he said it made Zenthka's blood freeze. "Sir," Dr. Turner spoke up, "I've been analyzing biological samples from the Kethvar bodies we recovered. Their physiology has some interesting weaknesses." Morrison looked at him. "Explain." "Their respiratory system is extremely sensitive to certain chemical compounds. Substances that are harmless to humans would be lethal to them in small concentrations." "Are you suggesting chemical weapons, Doctor?" Morrison asked. Turner adjusted his glasses. "I'm providing medical information that might be tactically relevant." Zenthka realized with growing horror that the ship's doctor was calmly discussing how to commit genocide. But none of the other humans seemed surprised or disturbed. They listened to Turner's briefing like it was a routine medical report. "We need to contact Fleet Command," Morrison said. "But first we're going to send the Kethvar a message they'll understand." Over the next week, Zenthka watched the humans implement what they called the education protocol. It was the most systematic and terrifying military campaign he had ever witnessed. Using the captured navigation data, they began hunting down isolated Kethvar outposts and supply bases. But they didn't just destroy them. They documented everything. Every attack was recorded and broadcast across Kethvar communication networks. Rick Davis led fighter squadrons that didn't just attack military targets. They went after infrastructure. Power plants, communication relays, transportation hubs. Anything that supported Kethvar military operations became a target. "We want them to know we can reach them anywhere," Kane explained to Zenthka during one of these attacks. "Fear is a weapon too." The humans had divided their operations into different categories. Amy Foster led teams that captured Kethvar officers for interrogation. Tony Miller worked on ways to disrupt enemy supply chains. Beth Young coordinated psychological warfare campaigns. that spread panic through Kethvar space, but the most disturbing part was how normal they all acted between operations. Dr. Turner would spend hours torturing information out of Kethvar prisoners, then immediately go back to his medical duties with the same gentle care he had always shown. Kelly Wright would calculate targeting solutions for attacks on civilian infrastructure, then play card games with the crew during off hours. They compartmentalized violence and compassion with perfect precision. Zenthka realized that humans could switch between mercy and cruelty at will, based purely on who they considered friend or enemy. The Kethvar are requesting a ceasefire, Beth Young reported during one briefing. They want to negotiate. Morrison looked at the message display. What are they offering? Complete withdrawal from human space. Reparations for the colonies they attacked. A formal non-aggression treaty. Counteroffer, Morrison said. Total surrender. Dismantling of their military fleet. War crimes trials for any officer involved in attacks on civilians. And they turn over their star charts and military codes. Young raised an eyebrow. Sir, they'll never agree to those terms. I know, Morrison replied. Send the message anyway. When they refuse, make sure our response is broadcast to every Kethvar world simultaneously. The response came back within hours. The Kethvar Empire rejected human demands and threatened to escalate the conflict. Morrison read the message aloud to his officers. They say we're just one ship and can't possibly threaten their entire empire, he said. They're wrong about that. What followed was 3 days of coordinated strikes across Kethvar space. The humans had used their time well, positioning automated weapons platforms and sleeper viruses throughout enemy territory. When Morrison gave the signal, 47 Kethvar military bases went offline simultaneously. But it wasn't random destruction. Every target was chosen for maximum psychological impact. The humans hit training academies, command centers, and communication hubs. They wanted the Kethvar to feel helpless and isolated. Status report, Morrison asked after the attacks. Kethvar military command structure is in complete chaos, Kane reported. Their fleet movements have stopped. Most of their ships are returning to defensive positions around their home worlds. Good. Now we hit them where they live. Steve Brooks looked up from his tactical display. Sir, are we targeting civilian populations? No, Morrison said. We're not like them. But we are going to make sure every Kethvar understands exactly what happens when you threaten human families. The final phase of the campaign was pure psychological warfare. The humans broadcast recordings of every destroyed Kethvar ship, every captured base, every interrogated officer. They showed the complete helplessness of the Kethvar military against human tactics. But they also broadcast something else. Video messages from human colonies, children playing in parks, families having dinner, people living normal, peaceful lives under the protection of human military forces. The message was clear. Humans could destroy their enemies completely, but they chose not to. They were merciful by choice, not weakness, and that choice could be revoked at any time. Within 2 weeks, the Kethvar Empire formally surrendered. They agreed to every human demand, including the trial of officers responsible for civilian casualties. Their entire military structure was dismantled under human supervision, but Zenthka knew the real victory wasn't military. It was psychological. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were capable of unlimited escalation while maintaining perfect control. They could be as merciful as saints or as ruthless as machines, depending on how they were treated, and they had done it all without losing their essential humanity. They still joked and played games and cared for each other. But now everyone knew what lay beneath that friendly surface. The nightmare wasn't that humans were monsters. The nightmare was that they were still human, even when they became the most dangerous force in the galaxy. 3 months after the Kethvar surrender, Zenthka sat in his cabin aboard the Defiance, staring at a blank report form on his datapad. He had been trying to write his final assessment for weeks, but the words would not come. How could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he make the Valorian Defense Council understand? Outside his window, he could see human ships arriving at the former Kethvar military base. The humans were converting it into a refugee center for displaced populations from the war zone. The same people who had systematically dismantled an entire military empire were now distributing food and medical supplies to their former enemies. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Dr. Turner entered carrying a medical scanner and a cup of coffee. Time for your final health check before transfer, he said with a gentle smile. Zenthka submitted to the examination, watching Turner work with the same careful precision he showed in everything. This was the same man who had developed biological weapons and tortured prisoners for information. Now he was making sure a Valorian observer was healthy enough for travel. You seem stressed, Turner observed, reading the scanner results. Having trouble with your report? How did you know? Turner sat down in the cabin's only chair. You've been asking everyone questions for weeks, trying to understand something. What is it you want to know? Zenthka set down his datapad. How do you do it? How do you switch between kindness and cruelty so easily? How are you the same people? Turner was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Have you ever had children, Zenthka? No. Valorians reproduce differently than humans. Well, imagine you did. Imagine you loved them more than your own life. Now imagine someone threatened to hurt them. Turner's voice was still gentle, but his eyes had gone very serious. How far would you go to protect them? I would do whatever was necessary, Zenthka replied automatically. Exactly. That's all we did. We protected our children. Turner stood up. The difference is we consider all humans to be our children. Our colonies, our civilians, our crew members. When someone threatens them, we stop being individuals and become something else. What do you become? Turner smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. We become whatever we need to be to keep our people safe. Sometimes that's healers and teachers and friends. Sometimes that's something much darker. After Turner left, Zenthka returned to his report. But first he reviewed the recordings he had made during his time with the humans. The transformation he had witnessed was documented in dozens of hours of video and audio. He watched Captain Morrison joking with his crew during their first meeting. Then he watched the same man calmly ordering the systematic destruction of an entire military infrastructure. The physical person was identical, but something fundamental had changed in his eyes. He watched Amy Foster playing cards with other Marines, laughing at simple jokes. Then he watched her leading boarding parties with lethal efficiency, showing no mercy to enemies who had threatened human civilians. The same hands that dealt cards also fired weapons with perfect precision. He watched the entire crew transition from casual friends to ruthless warriors and back again, sometimes within the span of minutes. They did it without apparent effort or internal conflict. It was simply who they were. Zenthka began typing his report. Valorian Defense Council, Military Assessment Division, he wrote. Subject, Human Combat Effectiveness in Military Psychology. Observer, Zenthka, Senior Analyst. Initial assessment was incorrect. Humans are not inexperienced or undisciplined warriors. They are something entirely different from any species previously encountered. He paused, trying to find words for what he had learned. Human military effectiveness does not derive from superior technology or training, though both are adequate. It derives from their psychological structure, which allows for unlimited escalation while maintaining rational control. Most species fight with instinctual responses: territorial aggression, dominance behaviors, survival reflexes. Humans fight with calculated purpose. They determine what outcome they want, then apply exactly enough force to achieve it. This can range from minimal violence to complete annihilation, depending on the perceived threat level. The key factor is their social bonding mechanism. Humans extend family-level protective instincts to large groups, including entire colonies and civilian populations. Threats to these groups trigger responses that bypass normal inhibitions against extreme violence. However, this response is not emotional or uncontrolled. Humans maintain full cognitive function during combat operations. They can simultaneously plan complex strategies, show mercy to non-combatants, and implement systematic destruction of enemy capabilities. During the conflict with the Kethvar Empire, I observed humans transition between normal social behavior and total war mode multiple times. This transition appears to be conscious and voluntary. They can activate extreme violence when needed, then return to peaceful behavior immediately afterward. Most disturbing is their ability to compartmentalize these different states. The same individual can show genuine compassion for wounded enemies while planning their species' complete military defeat. They experience no apparent internal conflict between these contradictory actions. Zenthka stopped typing and walked to his window. In the distance, he could see human children playing in the refugee center's recreation area. Some of them were young Kethvar who had been orphaned during the war. Human caretakers were teaching them games and sharing meals with them. These were the children of the enemy. 6 months ago, their parents had been trying to exterminate human colonies. Now they were being raised by human families who would love and protect them as their own. But Zenthka knew that if anyone threatened these children, the same humans caring for them would become something that could destroy worlds. He returned to his report. Military recommendation. Under no circumstances should the Valorian Defense Council consider humans as potential enemies. This recommendation is not based on fear of human military technology, which is equivalent to our own. It is based on the assessment that humans represent an entirely new category of threat. Previous conflicts have involved territorial disputes, resource competition, or ideological differences. These can be resolved through negotiation, compromise, or limited warfare. Humans fight differently. They fight to completely eliminate threats to their social groups. They do not seek conquest or domination. They seek absolute security for their people. Any species that threatens human civilians will face total military destruction. There will be no negotiation, no compromise, and no mercy. However, humans also demonstrate unprecedented capacity for cooperation and mutual aid. Species that maintain peaceful relations with humanity can expect generous assistance and protection. The same psychological mechanisms that make them dangerous to enemies make them valuable allies. Personal note. I have observed humans show kindness to prisoners who were trying to kill them hours earlier. I have watched them share food with refugee children, whose parents died fighting human forces. They are capable of genuine compassion even for their enemies. But I have also watched them systematically dismantle a military empire that threatened their colonies. They did it with perfect efficiency and no apparent emotional distress. They treated the complete destruction of an enemy species' military capability as a routine task. This combination of unlimited violence potential with genuine moral restraint makes humans unlike any species in our database. They are not monsters, but they are the most dangerous beings I have ever encountered. The galaxy has never seen anything like them. The nightmare is not that they are evil. The nightmare is that they are still human even when they become forces of nature. They can love their enemies' children and destroy their enemies' civilizations with equal sincerity. Final recommendation: maintain peaceful relations with humanity at all costs. Whatever they ask for, give it to them. Whatever they offer, accept it gratefully. Never under any circumstances threaten human civilian populations. They are not like us. They are not like anyone, and that makes them the most important species in the galaxy. Zenthka read through his report one final time, then submitted it to the Valorian Defense Council. He knew they would not fully understand it. No one could without seeing humans in battle for themselves, but maybe that was for the best. Some knowledge was too dangerous to spread. Some nightmares were better left undisturbed. Outside his window, human children were laughing as they played with their former enemies' children. And somewhere in the ship, Captain Morrison was probably having coffee with his crew, making jokes and planning the next mission to help refugees find new homes. They were the most normal, friendly people Zenthka had ever met. And that was the most terrifying thing of all.